my camping tent. It's my transportable, affordable apartment where I open the roof, zipper, and can watch the Big Dipper rising as a breeze blows through the window vent. It's time well spent.
Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Scouting Around the House, and today I thought we'd talk about setting up tents. So here I have our tent tarp with its tag so we know which number it is, and here is our tent. And of course within our tent bag we have a bag with poles, we have the tent itself, the tent bag, and the stakes happen to be in here with the poles. Our stake bag. This tent, being an older style Eureka outfitter, 4-person tent, has 8 stakes. So, the first thing we want to do is roll out our tarp. So we're going to take off our bungee, put it to the side here with the rest of our gear, make sure we don't lose it. And we will take our tarp and unroll it. And then we will unfold the tarp as well, spreading it out. I'm not going to get too worried just yet about making it in the perfect spot, because we can always adjust it after we get the tent set up and on it. This is of course easier when there's 2 of you, but clearly you will see if I can do it, 2 of you can certainly do it. Okay, and so now that our tarp is spread out, I'm now going to roll out our tent. And if you guys recall, we'll do another video actually about putting tents away, but we always roll towards the door. So I know this end of the tent is actually the door, so I'm going to put it here where I want my door. And I'm going to unroll it. And then within the tent is actually the fly. I'm just going to move that to the side for now. Put that on after the tent is up. And now I'm going to spread the tent out, unfold it. Tent should have been folded into the middle, which it was. So this side will go here. This part of the tent will go over here. And as I mentioned, this is the end of the tent that has the door on it. Now you'll notice I'm not actually putting the stakes out just yet, because I'm actually going to set the tent up with the poles first, and then I will stake it to make sure that it's on the tarp properly. Now if it was a really windy day, you might want to actually stake it down just to keep it from moving on you. So within our pole bag we have these individual poles, which are ridge poles, 2 of those. We have a pole here that is in 3 different sections. This actually goes on the ridge as well. I'm going to put that to the side. And then we should have 4 poles that are made up of 4 sections. And you'll see they actually have a narrower tip. So here is the narrower tip on the pole that I was talking about. And that tip goes up. So we're gonna lay out our tent stakes, 1 on each corner. I like to angle them kind of up towards the top, that's where they're going to go. Like that. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and put the tents, or the poles, onto the tent, and put in the ridge pole and get it set up. So one thing I do want to point out So one thing I wanted to get up here a little bit closer for is to show you that there's actually, I refer to it as an L, but if you actually look really close on here, not sure if you can make that out or not, it actually has an arrow pointed up, an arrow pointed to the right, and that should be facing you when you put the poles in here. If you put it this way, you're going to have a problem because the ridge pole, there's actually a little angle to how this hole here for the ridge pole goes through, and if you have it twisted the wrong way, it'll give you a little problem. So as long as you see this little symbol, most of them have them, some of the replacement ones do not, but as long as you see that little symbol facing you, you should be good. Okay, so since I'm doing this alone, I'm going to have my ridge pole close by at hand, and I'm actually going to kneel down here, my little L facing me. I'm going to put the poles in this first. Some people put them in the pins at the bottom. I think it's easier if you do this first, and then come over here. There's a pin here at the corner that goes right in the leg. So this is the loop, and this is the pin that I mentioned that will go in the bottom of our poles. So the pole, slide onto the pin. Little loop, and then you go do the other side. Okay, and then I'm going to let that one actually lay down. I'm going to come do the other end. Again, if there's two of you, you each would do one end by yourself and hand each other the ridge pole. Again, I'm now putting the corners in, the pin at the corner. And I'm going to elevate the tent a little bit and start my ridge pole. Now again, I'm doing this by myself, so I'm going to put in the ridge pole. I'm actually going to walk around the tent, trying not to step on the white part, holding my ridge pole. I'm going to tilt this up. So here's a little trick, guys. Again, I mentioned that this has an angle to it, and sometimes it's hard to get it at the right angle. So if you lean it in, it gets a little bit flatter, and then it's easier to get that pole in there. Now in the process, one of my corners came out, but that's not a big deal. I'm going to come over here and put it in. Okay, and now that I've got the ridge pole in, I'm going to actually put the elastic in and have it pull the top of the tent up. This is how the bungee attaches to the yoke. One side and one side. They loop around and should look like that. Come and get a close-up on this in a minute. So I'm talking about this elastic here. This is actually a fairly new tent, so this elastic is pretty good. You do one side, and then the other. You want to keep your fingers out of the way. Now that that's up, I'm going to do my clips on the poles, front and back. And now is when I would actually consider putting the stakes around. So now I'm going to take 4 stakes and I'm going to stake the tent. So when you stake the tent, guys, over the tarp, I always remind you that it's important to make sure that the tarp is completely covered by the tent. And what you have to do is make sure that the tent is pulled tight. So if you start in one corner and put in a stake, you then should go to the next corner, and this front part across here, since I started over there, I want to pull it tight. And now put in my next stake. And when you put a stake in the ground, don't put it straight down, put it at an angle. The reason you do that is if you put it straight and the wind comes and pulls this tent up, the tent's going to want to go like that. And that makes it easy for the stake to come right out. But if you put your stake at an angle and this wants to go up, it can't move. So the next thing I'm going to do is go stake the other corners. Okay guys, I wanted to take the camera off the tripod because I want to show you, what you're looking for when you stake the next corner of the tent. So if you look down the side of this tent, you can see that that tarp is sticking out, and that's what you don't want, because if it were to rain, the rain came down the side of this tent and got on that tarp, the rain's going to run under your tent, get between the tent and the tarp, and it's going to get the inside all wet. So what you do before you stake this corner, by the way, there's the ring that I was talking about before, and you can see the pin at the bottom here. Okay, so what we're going to do, you can see, so I have my hand down here. I'm going to pull this tight, and you can see it's now straight. And by doing that, your tarp disappears underneath the tent. So again, I take my stake, put it in at an angle, and now I'm going to go do the fourth corner, and the last corner. As you can see, across the back here, I have a little bit of tarp sticking out. And on this side, I have a little bit of tarp sticking out. So again, I pull it tight, that side goes away, and the back goes away. That's how you make sure that your tarp is completely under your tent when you stake. Okay, so here we are after setting up the tents before we put the fly on, with all four corners staked. The tarp is completely hidden. Our ridge pole is in. I just wanted to point out that it's going to have a little arch like that. That's natural. That's how it gets a little tension. All our corners are put on. This tent, generally when we put them away, we like to leave the door open. It helps the air come out. So we'll close the door in a second. But I just thought we'd take a quick walk around the tent. So Mr. Bredemeier actually has a little bit of tarp sticking out on this side. So now that it's staked, and I believe it's tight, we would actually probably come over here, and we're just going to reach under, and we're going to scooch that tarp a little bit that way. And now we're good. Okay, so the next step in putting up our tent is to put our fly on. So when you put on this fly, you'll need to spread it out. And when you do that, you want to make sure that you find the part that goes on the ridge. There's a couple of things you can look for. One is that our numbers for the tent and the troop number is on the side. So that's a little bit of a clue that that should be a side or a lower corner. The other thing though that I would point out to you is on the underside of the tent, you'll see this brown patch here. This is actually a contact point that will go on top. And here's another piece of elastic with a little hook on it. This is going to be for your pole here when we attach that. So that obviously needs to go in the center too. If I were to put this, so this one's actually going to go on just like this. If I were to put it on this way, I would have the fly on sideways, and you will discover when you go to put in those final two ridge poles for the awning that you have a problem. So again, if there are two of you, you would each take an end and you would lift it up over the side. But since I'm here by myself, I'm going to have to kind of fling it. Kind of got it there. So I'm going to go straighten it out in the back. Okay, and now that I know that I have it positioned properly on the tent, the next thing I'm going to do is grab my poles, I'm going to add those here to the end. So the awning pole also has a tip that narrows and a wider part. The ridge pole sticking through here, it has a narrow part. So the narrow part, the fat part slides onto the narrow part when you put on your awning ridge pole. You can see there's a little bit of pole sticking out. This simply goes on there. And then, as I pointed out, the elastic and the hook goes in the end, and that's what holds it on. If you don't put this on first and you try to do the corners, this will be too tight up here, and you'll have a struggle getting it on, and you'll end up having to take a corner loose. So now that I have this end done, I'm actually going to do these corners. And one of these goes down here, and the other one goes over here. Now I'm going to go do the back. I'm going to do the back corner after I put in the ridge pole. Okay guys, so the last thing we need to do is attach the sides of the fly here and put in our side stakes. So that's what this part is here. That's where the stake will go. And this part here, you see this little clip, is what attaches to the tent. So there's two ways you can do this. You can obviously take this clip, you can squeeze it and stick it through and clip it to this loop here. Or, I will tell you, those clips are rather hard to squeeze. The other little trick that I've shown other people is if you put that thing through there and you get it a little sideways, I always talk about it kind of makes a T, or it actually spreads out. You spread it out like that. That also attaches it to that ring so that it won't come out. And we take our stake, doing this while using a camera, and we pull it out to the side. Oops. A little tricky, doing it one-handed. And again, we put our stake in at an angle, push it down, and that pulls the side of our fly out from the tent. It actually does a couple of things. It pulls out the inside of the tent a little bit, so you have a little bit more room, but it also creates a path for air to flow up and over your tent to help with condensation and to help keep you cool. So now I'm going to go around and I'm going to do that to the other side clips on the fly. So guys, that's how to set up a tent. This is usually how it goes. And now we go get something to eat. Yay! What? Wait a minute. I think I forgot something. So that's usually what happens. Everybody gets their tent set up, and then they either put all their gear in, or again, they go off to the dining fly to see what's being made for supper. But we got a problem, guys. What's all this stuff here? This stuff's important. And of course, I will not be happy if your tent comes back and some of this stuff is missing. So the last thing you do, guys, after you get your tent set up, is you take your bag that your tent came in, you take your tarp bungee, you take your stake bag, and you take your pole bag, and you stick them all together. And then after you got it in there, you simply open up your tent and stick it in a corner. And now you know where everything is, so when you take down the tent, you can find it. There we go. That's how you set up a tent. But wait, there's more. So guys, a few things I want to point out that I'm not sure everybody is aware of when it comes to our tents. First off, it's cool to be inside them, like I am. But if you want to stay even cooler, there's a screen on the back. You simply unzip these zippers, and you can leave this open. Obviously, you would like a little privacy, so if you're changing, close it up. But otherwise, I would actually recommend, guys, even at night, you leave at least a little triangle like that at the top, on the back. Okay, and now let's talk about the door and cool things that the door has. First off, in front of your tent, there's your bag that I talked about, making sure that you put all your stuff in it. There's a little pocket here where you guys can put things, your personal belongings, so they don't get lost. It's a good place to maybe put some money, keeps it up off the floor. You also have a few more vent options here. On this particular, not all tents have this little vent at the bottom. That gives you a little vent at the bottom. They do have up here at the top, similar to the back, you can open that up as well. And if you decide to open it up all the way, make sure everybody's aware of this. See these little Velcro straps here? You can roll it up and then Velcro it together. So that is what it looks like when you roll it up and Velcro it together. So one other handy thing I want to point out is, I'm not sure everybody's aware of this, but when you're putting your gear in, you want the door open, nice and wide like this, there is actually a little strap over here with a little hook that if you take your door and pull it to the side and hook those two things together, that will hold your door open while you're coming and going and putting your gear in and out. Okay, and then last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about zippers, guys. So, it's best if you open the door, the side and the bottom, of course, the zipper, when you come and go, so that you can get out of the tent easily. Don't just open the side and squeeze through. That ruins the zippers. The other thing I want to point out, the zipper going down is really not too much of a problem. That's why everybody always does the side zipper. But this zipper here at the bottom has this little flap, which is to keep the rain out. And so, if you're not careful, you pull this zipper across and keep that flap out of the way, it likes to get caught. And that's why most people don't like using the bottom zipper. However, if you keep your little hand under there, kind of keep that flap up, now see that? It's starting to get caught. So when it gets caught, you have to back it up. Or somebody has to come and help you back it up to get it unstuck. So again, be careful with the zippers. That's a door properly closed. The little flap sticking out. The rain won't get in there because the bottom flap is over it and it's not caught. So that's how we open and close our doors, guys. Thanks. Until next time.
My camping tent, it's my transportable, affordable apartment where I open the roof, zipper and can watch the Big Dipper rising as a breeze blows through the window vent. It's time well spent living in my